this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
The Middle is supported by Journalism Funding Partners, a nonprofit organization striving to increase the sustainability of local journalism by building connections between donors and news organizations. More information on how you can support The Middle at listentothemiddle.com. Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, joined as always by our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, last week we shifted topics at the last minute because of the Trump verdict. So this week we're bringing the very important topic that had to be bumped.
Yeah, and I think this is like the story of the year, so I'm really glad we could circle back to it, you know?
Yeah, it certainly has the potential to grow into a much bigger conflict and has really seen an emotional response here in the United States. Of course, we're talking about the war in the Middle East, which is a war that the U.S. is involved in, but is not directly fighting in. As we remember, it started with the brutal Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. Israel's response has led to devastation in Gaza and tens of thousands of deaths. So our question to you this hour, how might the war in the Middle East affect your vote? Tolliver, what is the number for people to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353, or write to us at listentothemiddle.com.
And before we introduce our panel, last week we asked you about your thoughts on the guilty verdict in the Trump trial. Here is what some of you had to say.
This is James calling from Red Wing, Minnesota.
I'm calling from Murphy, North Carolina. My name is Karen Jordan.
Hi, my name is Chris Bostic. I'm calling from beautiful Altadena, California.
Hi, this is Deborah, and I live in Augusta, Georgia. I was pleased to hear the verdict today, just because no one should be above the law in this country.
I am not happy about the verdict. All those jurors should be questioned.
I'm a Republican, and I believe in law and order, and I think law and order were done today. This is shameful that's happening in our government, but maybe it teaches us a lesson. Be careful who you vote for.
I don't think that his criminal conviction is really a loss at all. This is not the case that's going to energize young people. That is going to mean either the victory or defeat of the Democratic Party in November is getting young people 18 to 25 out to vote. This case, it ain't going to do it.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in. So now to our topic this hour, the war in Israel and Gaza. Since the Hamas attack and Israel's response, the Biden administration has tried for a delicate balancing act, standing by the U.S. ally Israel while calling for more humanitarian aid to Gaza and trying to avoid a wider war in the region. Needless to say, not everyone is happy with that balance, especially on the left and at university campuses. That was at Columbia University. Worth noting that President Biden has now called for a ceasefire himself, while former President Trump has said that Israel needs to, quote, finish the war fast. So our question for the hour, how might the war in the Middle East affect your vote? Again, our number is 844-464-3353. I don't really need to give it out again, Tolliver, because the lines are already full on this conversation. I just want to ask that we have a civil conversation even when we disagree. That's what this show is all about. So let's meet our panel. Deborah Amos, longtime international correspondent, formerly with NPR, now a professor at Princeton, joining us from Berlin. Deb, great to have you with us again.
Hi, good morning from me.
Good morning. And Democratic political strategist Yvette Simpson joins us from Cincinnati. She's the former executive director of Democracy for America and current host of the Power of Why podcast. Yvette, welcome to The Middle.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Well, and before we get to the phones, people don't tend to vote on foreign policy issues, but we also don't tend to see protests like we have with this war. Do you each see this as an issue that could have a meaningful impact on the U.S. election? I'll start with you, Deb, in Berlin.
It seems so. Who knows what people will do when they walk into the voting booth, because there are two starkly different choices, and also starkly different choices about how a president, whoever wins, will deal with the Middle East. But this one has polarized in ways that, look, I'm a longtime Middle East correspondent. I have never seen anything like this. It's the same in Europe. I'm in Berlin. There have been protests here. It's just extraordinary how connected people are with this issue.
Why is that, by the way? Why do you think that is, that you've never seen anything like this, but it's happening now? Because this conflict has been going on for a very long time.
I think there's a couple of things to think about. One, the Black Lives Matter protests in 21, 22, it was called the American Intifada because I think Black Americans saw the Palestinian struggle as something akin to theirs. I think the latest protests, I just wrote a Substack about this and talked to somebody at Human Rights Watch who said, look, this is such a culmination of authoritarianism, of Brexit, of COVID, of climate change. And young people are disgusted with the world that they are inheriting. And so the protests are about anger, about what we are going to leave them. And I think that is an interesting way to look at it.
Yvette, what about you? Do you see this as an issue that is going to have a meaningful impact on the election this fall?
I think so, and here's why. So you've got several coalitions that the Democrats need to win embattled in this, right? Jewish people are a huge part of our voting coalition. We wouldn't have won Pennsylvania without the strong outpouring of Jewish support. You've got the Muslim coalition that we built up to win Michigan. You've got young people who saved our hides all across the country. You've got African Americans who saved us in Georgia. These are all key states, not just for the presidential, but for Senate races too. And those margins were really thin. And even if people don't go into the polling location thinking about it, think about the young people and all of the progressives and all of these people that we need to organize right now. The election starts now. So we need them volunteering. We need them knocking on doors. We need them enthusiastic. Because as we know, Democrats fall in love, but Republicans will fall in line. And so we need everybody in love with the president. And if they're not, then they disengage. And we need full engagement in this election.
And I should just say to our listeners that one of the reasons we wanted to have you on as a Democratic strategist is because most of the people who are really angry about this are on the left in this country. So we wanted to make sure that we had someone like you who really understands so much about the Democratic Party to help us talk as we hear from our listeners who are calling in. I do want to say, though, that when you look broadly at the candidates, President Biden, as we said, has recently called for a ceasefire. Former President Trump has said Israel should get the war over with quickly, although he reportedly told donors at a closed-door meeting that he would, quote, crush Palestinian protesters in this country. And then there is the independent candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has said, quote, Israel is doing more right now to protect human life and has done more over the past 16 years to avoid this outcome than we would expect of any nation in the world. So pretty favorable to Israel with him as well. Deborah Amos, do you see a big difference between the candidates on the issues happening in the Middle East?
Oh, yeah. Let's just look at Nikki Haley's visit to Israel, where she wrote on a bomb, finish them. Is she talking about Hamas? Is she talking about the Palestinians? That is not clear. And I think there is a big difference. And all of those activists who aren't falling in love, maybe the right strategy is falling in line, because if that is what they're concerned about, they really don't have a place to go. I've been an American for a long time, and I've learned to hold my nose on a number of occasions. That's often what we get. So I think that there is a stark difference.
Let's go to the phones, and Jane, who's in Eagan, Minnesota. Jane, welcome to the middle. Go ahead. Is the situation in the Middle East going to affect your vote?
Yeah, so I'm 18 years old, and it's going to be my first election that I can vote in. And I grew up very political and looked forward to my first vote, like counting down the years, it felt like, because I was so excited. And I felt like that joy was taken away because there is no one that can align with my values. I am willing to accept the fact that after the primaries and all that stuff, that there isn't always going to be a person that you completely and 100% agree with that are going to win, that are the two, most
So what are you going to do?
Votes. As someone who's been protesting in college campus and at my college campus, I cannot vote for Biden, who is someone who, I would have voted for, but this is not something I can bite my tongue at. This is not something that I'm willing to just accept. That isn't. I cannot vote for Biden, and I, for a long time was under the belief that, you don't vote for the two major people, then you're throwing your vote away. And, I think there's some truth to that, but I also think that the country doesn't realize that every year new voters are getting added to the population of voters.
Right. So sorry, Jane, I don't mean to interrupt, but just briefly, are you going to vote for a third party candidate? Are you not going to vote? What's your plan?
I plan on voting for a third party. I don't believe. Oh my God, I'm getting pulled over.
Okay. Uh-oh. Be careful, Jane. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Hope everything is okay there. Don't get pulled over for calling into the middle. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yvette, though, what do you think about what Jane had to say there?
I think we know that young people are the engine of change in our country, right? Go back to Vietnam War, go back to the civil rights movement. Young people are powering the future. And I don't agree that we should have young people voting third party. I think that they should all vote for the candidate that is the best candidate who can win. But also, democracy is about making sure that you are earning a vote. And so these young people who have been living in a state of war since they were born, remember, these are the 9/11 kids who lived through Iraq, through Afghanistan. They are strongly anti-war. They are strongly pro-diplomacy. And so we need to make sure that we are listening to them and engaging them.
Well, Tolliver, as we said earlier, protests over this conflict have popped up at college campuses all over the country.
Yeah, a lot of people have drawn comparisons to the protest movement against the Vietnam War. Here's President Nixon's thoughts on the protests after the U.S. invasion of Cambodia in 1970.
Those who protest want peace. They want to reduce American casualties, and they want our boys brought home. I made the decision, however, for the very reasons that they are protesting. And as far as affecting my decision is concerned, their protests I am concerned about. I am concerned because I know how deeply they feel, but I know that what I have done will accomplish the goals that they want.
Wow, so interesting to hear that now. There's so many comparisons to things, Tolliver, that have happened in the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we try to point them out on this show. By the way, one of the goals that we have is to get our podcast rated highly. And so if you can do that for us, that would be wonderful. Wherever you listen to podcasts, write a review. And also you can give to The Middle in a tax-deductible way at listentothemiddle.com. We'll be right back with more of your calls.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime Time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking you, how might the war in the Middle East affect your vote? Tolliver, what is the number for people to call in safely, not driving safely?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media.
I'm joined by former NPR international correspondent Deborah Amos and Democratic political strategist Yvette Simpson. And let's go right back to the phones and Harry, who is in Missouri City, Texas. Harry, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Yes, my take on this is my vote has been affected. I didn't vote for Joe Biden last time for reasons when he was Senator Biden. There are a lot of things I disagree with. I won't vote for him or Donald Trump. I am voting for a third-party candidate. And these people that we call the Palestinians, like Golda Meir said, there are no Palestinians. I use the ancient name. I use Peleshet for Judea. Peleshet is what Kemet, what the ancient what was called Egypt before it was called Egypt. Was Kemet. So those are the names I use. And a bunch of people got killed today with this bomb that they said that it was a U.S. bomb. And a few weeks ago, that people got killed with the tent, that was a U.S. bomb. And I just can't support Joe Biden in his genocide war with Netanyahu and the right-wing Zionist regime that he supports. So
Harry, thank you for that. Thank you for that call. Let me go to Deb Amos with the question. Harry brings up some of the recent incidents that have happened. It does seem like just about every week there's a big incident in the region that occurs. A lot of people, innocent people, killed, and one of the things that's very interesting here is what are the incentives for either side in the conflict, Hamas and Israel, to actually end this war? Because for Hamas, I've read that this is the thing that has made Israel an international pariah more than anything they could have imagined. And for Israel, there are questions of whether Netanyahu would be immediately kicked out of power if the war ended. So, Deb Amos, what are the things that are going on in the region that may be keeping this going on longer than, of course, the United States would like?
So at the moment, there is a ceasefire proposal that President Biden unveiled, but in fact, it is an Israeli proposal. And almost immediately, the Israeli prime minister began to walk back from it. He is under pressure from his extreme right wing, who say that they will leave his government if he ends the war. And he's also under pressure from members of his war cabinet who say they will leave his government if he doesn't come up with a day after plan. Now, there are negotiators in Egypt that is still going on, but here's the problem. And it's very stark. Netanyahu doesn't want to end the war, he says, because it could trigger an election. He could lose his job. Even President Biden mentioned that this week. Sinwar, the head of Hamas, who is in a tunnel underground, only wants one thing, and that is a guarantee that the war will end. And so far, Israel has not given that assurance. And so that's where the talks stand. The last thing I read is that Hamas wants a written guarantee that the war will end. I'm not sure if they will get it. This may be the last chance. The families of the hostages are apoplectic about what is happening. It's interesting who supports a ceasefire. The ultra-religious, the Orthodox, came out today and they said that they do support a ceasefire. But whether that makes any difference in Netanyahu's calculations, we will have to see. But I saw in one news report a 25% chance of a ceasefire. So we may not move that dial any further.
Let's go to Aditha, who is in Longmont, Colorado. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I think that the war in the Middle East is an important issue, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all issue. And I think it's very naive in 2024 to focus on one particular issue when there's a slew of political issues on the table. So I'm going to enthusiastically vote for Joe Biden in November. And even when we look at the Middle Eastern issue, I think that the Democratic Party has the correct stance on this. We want some restraint into what Israel's doing in the Middle East. We don't want any more casualties than is necessary. But we also do want to enthusiastically support Israel's right to self-defend against an attack from Hamas, killing numerous innocent people.
Aditha, I have to say, I don't mean to judge based on your voice, but you sound somewhat young to me. And I wonder if you are, in fact, what we would call young. And are you arguing with your friends about this issue?
Yeah, I'm a young voter. It's going to be my first presidential election. I'm 20 years old. Wow. And I do notice among my peer group, my stance may be a minority. Maybe it's a silent majority. But there are definitely a lot of people my age that don't agree with what I'm saying. But frankly, I think that my position is really the only pragmatic choice that will lead to progressive policies being adopted in the next 4 years.
Well, thank you for that call. Yvette Simpson, what do you think of that, what we just heard from Aditya?
Well, it's important to remember that no group is a monolith, right? We have all these generalizations about what Jews think and what Palestinians think and what young people think. But the reality is that they are all very different. And he's a pragmatic person. So, of course, being a pragmatist, he's going to go with the solution that he thinks is best. Young people are wanting to have a voice. And so they're saying, I get the right to vote, I get the right to choose, but I don't get to choose the person that I like. And I don't get a voice at the table of the person who's leading. So our two-party system does not give young people the ability to say, hey, Biden, I like you on this, this, and this. I wish you would do this, this, and this. And I think we have struggled as a party for years and years and years of alienating these voices and not giving them at least a chance having a conversation. These young people are also anti-oppression. They were the ones that spoke out against anti-Semitism, the Tree of Life synagogue shooting. They actually believe in this stuff. And so it's really important, I think, to hear them. I hope they all go and vote. I'm going to be organizing them like I always do to vote. But they're not hearing their parents saying you vote because you were supposed to vote. They want their vote to count. They want to be heard and they want to be a part of the process. And I think our party needs to figure out how to do that.
Let's go to Isaac, who's in Minneapolis. Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah. First, my main point on a humanitarian stance. I'm a Muslim. I'll say that, disclaimer. But on a humanitarian stance and just personal stance, I can't continue to support Biden because he is supporting what is, what most people in the UN are calling like a genocide, And also just to follow up on the last caller, if you're looking at this just in a U.S. position in the world, we're looking a lot weaker because we have made all these. Biden has had so many different times where he's mentioned, if Israel doesn't do this, then we're gonna do X, Y, Z, and we've had to walk back so many red lines we had set, and it just fundamentally makes the U.S. look weaker, that we're bowing down to another country's, demands or something. And I just in terms of as a person who wants to see the U.S. in a strong place in the world, that makes us look weaker.
Who are you going to vote for, Isaac?
At the moment, I don't think I'm going to vote for anyone. All the candidates, as you mentioned, have a really strong stance in favor of what is really going on right now, and I just can't live with myself if I vote for them. I did vote for Biden. I was very enthusiastic about voting for Biden. I was very happy about my vote. Celebrated it with everyone, all my friends, and a lot of my friends are regretting it because of what we've seen.
Yeah. Isaac, thank you very much for that. Deb Amos, I do want to give you an opportunity to weigh in on something that Isaac brought up, and I think we heard from another caller before, the word genocide, which obviously is something that's been thrown around a lot in this conflict, but strongly protested by the Biden White House and many others.
I think because it's a legal term. Look, I've just been teaching journalism here, and my young journalists all want to use that. And I said, you're 20 years old and you're not a lawyer. You don't get to do that. What is happening is bad enough. And so it doesn't need that label. And we will find out from the ICJ, the court on it. It's their job to determine it. That's how international humanitarian law works. If it's a public opinion, then it is yours. But I think throwing it around is not helpful.
Yvette, I know you're an attorney yourself, right?
Right.
Your
and
thoughts
I agree with
on
that.
that?
I mean, I agree with what Deb is saying. I studied international human rights. It is a defined term. I think it throws gas on the fire, pardon the analogy, but it really does when we throw out these terms. I don't know what it serves. I think at the end of the day, though, we're all kind of wanting some of the same stuff. I think if Biden had really set, the standard from the beginning, saying this is not necessarily our war. This is a tough call for us. We know who the enemy is, and it's Hamas. We have to do what's best both to protect Jewish life and to protect Palestinian life. And really framing, because Biden has been really clear about where he doesn't have power. He will say the Senate won't let me do it. I can't do that executive order. But in this context, he's making promises. I agree with the caller, and it's setting him up because people are expecting him to do something when really he has very little control here.
Tolliver, I know some comments are coming in online.
So many. Sheila in Chicago writes, do I deplore Biden's support for Israel? I do. But by past indications, Trump's position would be equally bad or worse. As well, Trump's record shows that he has little interest in the general well-being of ordinary Americans. His policies will favor the rich and powerful, as did his earlier tax cuts. Melanie in Minnesota, our third Minnesotan, says, it is irresponsible to phrase the discussion about the war in Israel and Gaza. Words have power. It is Israel perpetuating a war on Palestine. Please say what it is and stop the verbal gymnastic propaganda.
Let's go to Jake in Baltimore, Maryland. Hi, Jake. Welcome to the middle.
Hi, thanks for having me on. First, I want to say what an amazing program this is and what a great platform you've created. Secondly, I was prompted by the call screener to let you know why I was calling in and who I would support in the presidential election. I think Joe Biden's been very strong as a leader in the world in the way he's handled the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in this case. He was the first international leader to meet with the kidnapping victims' families after October 7th. When Netanyahu himself would not even meet with them. And I think he showed what a true statesman would be. And as I indicated to the call screener earlier, I think Joe Biden is practically catatonic. And so I wouldn't have voted for him or supported him in this next election, whereas I held my breath and held my nose and voted for Hillary Clinton previously. I would say that regarding your other callers and the people who wrote in regarding calling this a genocide, I think it's difficult. It's a very challenging language to deal with, and they should be infinitely more careful when one sovereign nation is protecting its own sovereignty and borders.
Yeah, Jake, thank you very much for that call. Let me squeeze another one in here. Lizzie is in Madison, Wisconsin. Hi, Lizzie. Is the war in the Middle East going to affect your vote this November?
So I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm very torn, absolutely. I've got all of my other friends who are also in our mid-20s. Very different opinions, for sure. I mean,
So what are you going to do?
Whether I want.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
I'm truly undecided. I'm definitely leaning towards not voting for Biden.
Yeah.
It's because I do think it is absolutely a travesty what's going on. I think that the people claiming that this is just Israel defending themselves are honestly a bit naive, because we've seen a rate of murder and violence of like 30 Palestinians dead for every Israeli that was killed. I think that's outrageous and absolutely obscene. And the fact that my tax dollars are paying for that, it absolutely does not sit right with me.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I do have a lot of friends who are still trying to convince me that, you know, given the alternative, what really real choice is there. But I don't know. The defense that Israel, you know, has the right to defend itself. Well, what about Gaza? What about the Palestinian people? Do they not also have a right to not die? We've seen 36,000 plus deaths in a few months.
We've got it there. Thank you, Lizzie, for that. Yvette Simpson, definitely a lot of callers who are calling in saying, you know, they supported Biden in the past and aren't going to now. What needs to happen? I mean, it seems like a pretty big problem for the Democrats right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion around it, and I get that. And, you know, we need to bring it back to the fact that there is, you know, this started with Hamas, the murder of Jewish people, the continued hostage situation that exists there, and then, of course, the death of tens of thousands of Palestinians. And I think what has to happen is Joe Biden needs to get really real, I think, with our party. And I think our party needs to come together. We have Jewish Americans in our party. We have Palestinian Americans in our party, and really start to have conversations and engage with people about what's really happening. The rhetoric is not helping. And also making sure that he acknowledges, as I said, that he is not Netanyahu. He is not the ruler of Israel. He has tried very much to have conversations. He has tried very much to be a voice, but he cannot stop Hamas. He does not have that control. So I think there is this expectation that he can do a lot more than he has. Diplomacy, conversations, engagement about what is possible and what is not. And also, I hate to continue to say this, but it's a binary choice. He is the better alternative. And we have to know that. What I worry about with this war is that it's not happening here. It certainly impacts us here, but it could be the existential threat to our democracy if people don't show up and Trump gets reelected.
Deb, just briefly, how much power does Biden have right now? I mean, with Netanyahu at this point, or with Hamas for that matter?
He has the power of persuasion. He has ultimately the power of weapons and how much and can he turn off the tap. But this is happening in an election year. Let me also say that, you know, there's no one silver bullet to solve this. And he doesn't even have one. And he is doing his best. There's a second thing I think that's happening, and that is opinions are shifting on this issue, and that will take a while to play out.
Well, we talked earlier about the intensity of the protests taking place on college campuses about this conflict. And Tolliver, the protests at Columbia are a particularly deja vu moment.
Yeah, listen to what activist Jerry Rubin had to say in 1968 at Columbia during the protests over Vietnam.
We're living in the middle of a beast. Lyndon Johnson is a common murderer, and he should be arrested for murder. There are no limits to dissent. I think the peace movement should have the anger of a Vietnamese woman whose child was burned by napalm, dropped by American planes, way up there in the sky. That's the anger the peace movement should reflect.
More parallels on the middle.
Absolutely.
More parallels to now. We will be right back with more of your calls on the middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're asking you this hour, how might the war in the Middle East affect your vote? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. I'm joined by former NPR international correspondent Deborah Amos and Democratic political strategist Yvette Simpson. And let's go right back to the phones. And Danny, who's in Las Vegas, Nevada. Danny, go ahead. Welcome to The Middle.
Hey, how's it going? Glad I got on. I'll get right to it. I'll be pretty direct. I'm Jewish. I'm Moroccan. And I think the conflict in Palestine, or should I say the humanitarian disaster that's being inflicted on the Palestinians by Israel, is horrible. And it's gut-wrenching, and I'm so upset that we can't reach any kind of solution on this in the 21st century. But unfortunately, there's so much more on the line for our next election, from climate change to women's rights to my rights as a brown person. So while I understand people don't like President Biden, I'm an engineer. It's a pretty deterministic outcome for me. There's not going to be a third-party candidate winning, and if you don't vote for Biden, then that's contributing to Donald Trump. And I shouldn't have to say how horrible of a result that would be if he got back into power.
Danny, thank you for that call. Yvette Simpson, I imagine you like what Danny had to say there, and he's in a swing state, no less.
Mm-hmm. I'm a lawyer. I love pragmatists. I love practical people. I'm also an activist and an organizer and a strategist. And so I see the value in all of it. I mean, I think it's really important. You asked me before what Biden should do. What we always do. We educate, we inform, we organize, and we motivate people to show up. And I think it's really important not to miss that step. My real fear is that we've waited too late. So we're months away from the election. Folks will start early voting in no time. And we have not had the chance to get the message right, to really engage people. And every time I hear a young person that says they're not going to vote, I think that's a voter we need to be talking to. And we need to make sure that they are not only engaged, but getting other people to vote. I am very fearful of that. But I like voters like this young man who are very practical, because honestly, we need to let people know what's at stake here. I mean, we need to let them know that Trump being reelected is a threat, not only to our country, but to our world.
You know, it is a very tricky issue right now for any politician to talk about without being shouted down. I mean, every time I see a politician not showing up at some public event, I'm like, I wonder if they just don't want to have to face the protesters right now. Deb Amos, there is an election that's about to happen in the United Kingdom. You're in Europe right now. Is this as hot a political issue in all these places that the politicians just don't want to engage with people on the issue?
Yes, it is as hot here. What's been interesting in Germany is a recent poll that was published by Der Stern, which is a weekly magazine, shows 62% of Germans disapprove of the 8-month campaign in Gaza. Now, today is the 8-month anniversary. That was surprising for Germans, but I think you're also seeing a shift in opinion in the United States. It's generational. Let's remember that in Vietnam, the protests didn't immediately have a change across America. That took some time. But I mean, I certainly can see that the younger generation has very strong opinions. They eventually will run for office, be policymakers, and that shift is happening. And let us see. It may not be evident in this election, but it certainly is not over, not by a long shot.
We've certainly heard from a number of young people here on this program this hour. And I want to, by the way, say, you know, if you're a Republican and this is going to have an effect on your vote, give us a call at 844-4MIDDLE. Let's go to Catherine, who's in Jackson, Wyoming. Hi, Catherine. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hello, Jeremy. I'd like to think I'm young, but I don't know what your cutoff is. I am in Wyoming, very red state, so unfortunately I don't think it'll really matter what my vote is, but I have been writing to the President Biden for the last 6 months on my disapproval of how he has conducted the war, and so I just can't vote for him based on my conscience, because I feel like my vote is, casting my vote, I think about the children that were burned by the bombs the other day, and the tens of thousands of innocent people who've died in this war. As a proponent of peace, my vote is about that. I've been to Palestine myself firsthand, and have seen the illegal settlements there and the Israeli policies there, and I've always questioned our unconditional support of Israel. And I feel like it's really affecting our relationships abroad, particularly with the Arab world, and has affected our national security.
So, Catherine, are you going to vote, or are you just not going to vote for anybody?
I don't feel like it. I'm going to continue to write President Biden. I will, and express that he's lost my vote. He has. I voted for him in the last election, but this war has, and what it reflects, he's lost my vote.
Yeah. Catherine, thank you for that. Yvette Simpson, one thing I'm noticing is that a lot of these people who say that they're not going to vote for Biden are not saying that they're going to vote for Trump.
No. And that's the interesting thing about this conversation. I was thinking about it as I thought about Mike Johnson's inviting Netanyahu to speak. Really, the Republicans have the advantage the longer this war goes on, right? Like, if they can pull a few folks over to their side, if they can get voters to stay home by creating allowing this to go on to try to position themselves as the supporters of Israel, when we know the anti-Semitism, the racism, the white nationalism that they've supported, if they can just get a few. Look at 2000. The margins are so tight. 11,000. How many votes did Trump need the Secretary of State to find him in Georgia. We're talking about tight margins. And so the Republicans are in a powerful position because every single person that called in here and said they weren't voting, they're delivering a win for Republicans. They don't have to do much. And so it's really important, I think, for Biden to remember from a political strategy perspective that it's not just about what he does and doesn't do. It's about the fact that the Republicans are going to win no matter what. We've got to find a way. If you don't like what he did because you're pro-Palestinian or pro what he did with Israel because you're pro-Israel, either way, right? Like we're going to lose some people in the midst of that. And I think it's really important for him to frame that and be very careful about that because Republicans have all to gain because they don't have any of these coalitions at all. I mean, these are all overwhelmingly Democratic coalitions, and every person that doesn't show up or that goes to the other side, they win, we lose.
Let's go to Pranav, who's in St. Louis, Missouri. Pranav, welcome to The Middle. Is the war in the Middle East going to affect your vote this November?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name's Pranav. I'm from the University of Chicago, so I've seen firsthand an encampment, but on the other hand, we have a very strong Israeli and Jewish population. Just to quickly answer the question, this is my first time voting. I planned on voting for Biden before the October 7th attacks, which exacerbated the conflicts in the Middle East. I still plan on voting for Biden, and the reason why is because I kind of put myself in his shoes. What you see is, you have AIPAC, which is a very strong political action committee that has supported Biden close to $5 million. But on the other hand, a lot of his supporters side with Palestine. So now he has to do kind of a tightrope act. Meanwhile, on the other hand, many of Trump's supporters are very pro-Israel, but on the other hand, he's very backed by AIPAC. And so I do put myself in Biden's shoe. I think it's the more pragmatic choice because with all due respect, I don't think that voting third party or not voting is going to change the outcome of the election. So it's probably better to go with the candidate who I agree with more. A lot of people who I've talked to on campus, they try to replicate or parallel the Camp David Accords or UN Resolution 242, and I simply think that that's working backwards. So I think we just have to go with the best candidate forward, and in my opinion, that's Biden.
Pranav, thank you for calling in. And Deborah Amos, it's always impressive how well-versed in these issues our listeners are. But still, I come back to the question of, when we get to November with abortion and with democracy and with so many other issues going on, is this going to be the thing that when you get into that voting booth, you say, I have to make my choice based on what's going on in Gaza?
As I listen to these calls, informed, yes, but I certainly haven't heard anybody say, okay, this is where Biden stands and this is where Trump stands. So they're angry, and which is very understandable. They're outraged by what they see. We live in a world where everybody sees everything. But I haven't heard one person make the comparison of policy. Abortion, people know. That has been well discussed in the media. I think you could wake up anybody at 3:00 in the morning and ask them who stands where, and you would get a cogent answer. I'm not sure if you would on Israel-Palestine. I'm not sure if people have thought about, okay, if I don't vote or I vote for Trump, then what do I get?
Let's go to Phyllis, who's in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Hi, Phyllis. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so very much for offering me to give my opinion. I personally do not particularly care for the way that the current administration is handling the situation with Gaza, with the Israelis. However, even though that is so, I think we have bigger fish to fry here in the United States about what will happen to our democracy, what will happen to women's rights, what will happen with the Supreme Court and the justice system if we shift to somebody else. And I think we can always have a shot at straightening up the Israeli conflict later if democracy prevails. And I'm afraid that given another party, given the Republican Party, that just may not happen.
Phyllis, thank you very much for that call. Yvette Simpson, this is the kind of voter probably that President Biden and his team would like to hear from.
Yeah. Well, elections are always on the margins. Every election is decided by who doesn't show up. I always say not who shows up. And I think to Deb's point, those voters who are going to vote on core issues, make that comparison, they're the meat and potatoes, but the margins is what I worry about. When I think about knocking on doors across this entire country in 2020, it was about pulling those few folks who wanted to stay home. So much easier to stay home, or who didn't want to choose the lesser that they thought of two evils. Although I would say Biden is an angel compared to the alternative. But it is our effort is to get people out. And we do have the disadvantage, as I said before, because Republicans do fall in line. They show up, they vote, they're enthusiastic. They don't care what their leaders do. They're about retaining power. They're going to show up. And then we have to do the work of making sure that we get our folks out. And I think a huge education campaign around this war and what it is and what it's not. The ironic thing is that our coalitions in the party actually agree. I mean, when you talk to progressives about what happened with Hamas and the way that they infiltrated Jewish folks, they're like, that's wrong. They don't think that was right at all. They also don't like seeing Palestinian death. My fear is every single day we see more deaths. Every single day we see hostages not being released. Every single day hostages are found dead. This thing is going to get more and more heat. And if Biden is in the center, he's going to get it coming and going. I think him stepping out of the center and saying, hey, this is not the most important issue. We have all these other issues that we need you to think about is the play. Him continuing to bring it back to this with the speech last week. And, he made a bunch of, we're going to end this war and Hamas is going to go packing. And those are we had a long war in the Middle East ourselves. And we know that it's not easy to displace terrorists. It is not an easy thing to negotiate with them or get them to do what you want them to do. It is also not easy to get a sovereign to do what you tell them to do, especially someone as strong as Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
So I think he just needs to reset on that.
I'm going to squeeze one more call in here. Rashid is in Irving, Texas. Hi, Rashid. Go ahead. Welcome to the middle.
Hi, thank you. And as far as the war in Gaza, it won't affect my vote. And the reason for that is because both candidates, they've occupied the Oval Office. Their character's already been shown. And, I remember being in college during the Trump presidency, and, I was in law school, during the Biden presidency. And, we still felt the aftermaths of the Trump presidency. Like, for example, the Federalist Society at my school, they had the man who argued Dobbs, Scott G. Stewart, doing a victory tour over rolling back reproductive rights. And that really stuck, to my core. And, I think in this election, there is other things to worry about, as have already been said, besides the war in Gaza. Yeah. And I know that I think that Biden has the better character between the two.
Rashid, thank you for that. Deb Amos, one question I have is, as you're looking at this from Europe right now, is the rest of the world relying on the United States to solve this problem? Because as we've heard, Netanyahu is very powerful. Obviously, Hamas is in control of the situation as well. Is the United States being seen as the power that can bring a ceasefire?
Yes and no. Yes, because there is some power there, but no. What you see, for example, today, Spain announced that it was joining South Africa in the charge of genocide against Israel at the International Court. States here in Europe have decided to pull back on arms sales to Israel. 17 nations joined Biden's call for a ceasefire. I mean, everybody's got domestic politics on this too. This issue is as hot in Europe as it is in the United States. So politicians can't be seen to be doing nothing. I'm very curious, though, what will be the reaction in the U.S., especially these young voters, when the Israeli prime minister, invited by Republicans to speak in Congress? I will be watching that closely to see, are there protests?
What about in the Congress? Yvette, do you think that we're going to see members walk out?
I think so. I think so. I
think
think
so.
But I do think that it's tricky, right? Like the more you alienate and make Netanyahu an enemy, the more the Republicans win. Like he gets stronger, the more you make him the enemy. And so I'm curious about, Democrats are split on this issue on the vote of whether he should even be allowed to speak. And so it'll be interesting to see whether or not they give him the power that he desires. Right. As long as he's the man in the middle, as long as he's the man who then he gets more alienated, then he gets stronger, particularly with Jewish Americans who see him as synonymous with Israel and the key to solving this war, which I know that there are a lot of folks who don't like Netanyahu, but they also see him in a time of war as the one who can get them out of this. So I'd be very, very careful as Democrats about how we react here from a political strategy perspective, because Republicans are doing this because they want Democrats to take the bait on this.
Well, what a fascinating hour. So many incredible calls. And of course, I want to thank my guest, former NPR international correspondent, Deborah Amos. Early morning in Berlin. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And Yvette Simpson, a Democratic political strategist and former executive director of Democracy for America. Yvette, great to have you on as well.
Always a good time with you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
And Tolliver, what is on tap for next week?
We'll be asking how do we take the politics out of climate change? We'll be joined by former EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy and meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. You can join the conversation by calling 8444-MIDDLE or going to listentothemiddle.com.
And while you're there, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Joanne Jennings, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and John Barth. Our intern is Annika Deschler. Our technical director this week is Steve Mork. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig, and apparently all of our listeners are between 18 and 25 years old, so that's great. Thanks also to Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 410 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I'll talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I actually drop better when I'm high. It heightens my senses, calms me down. If anything, I'm more careful. Honestly, it just helps me focus.
That's probably what the driver who killed a 4-year-old told himself. And now he's in prison. You see, no matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.